Hello, Melissa. Mel. I said just before we started, should I call you? It feels weird calling you Melissa.
And it feels so formal.
Welcome to Her Empire Builder.
Seems lovely.
So nice to have you on. Okay, so there's so many questions that I want to ask you because there's so much value that you have to be able to share in so many different areas.
Thank you.
But can give us your origin story?
Once upon a time. You mean my business origin story? Or?
Yeah. Like, tell me all about you.
Oh, good Lord. So I'm an accidental entrepreneur. It's probably how I best describe myself. I was incredibly shy, incredibly awkward leaving school. Always wanted to be a lawyer. I loved debating. I loved arguing, still do. My husband will tell you. But I got to uni and the reality of that was really different than LA law, which I loved. Just gave away my age. And so a few years into that, I just realized it wasn't for me. And I was so lost because my dad really pushed me into law because I had the money story of you're a smart girl, therefore you have to do a profession. You can't do something creative. That's the path for you. So he really pushed me into that. And I didn't want to let him down. I had such low self-confidence. And he was an accountant and he just said to me, Mel, look, there's some law in accounting. Why don't you study that? And for the lack of anything else, I just started studying accounting. And at the end of my 20s, I wanted to do a bit more study. So theology of all things, just philosophy and theology has always fascinated me.
Yeah.
So I started my business and I took on a few clients just to support that study for no other reason at all. And then I kind of woke up 5 years later, realizing I had an accounting firm. I had no interest in being an accountant. But more than that, I was in a marriage that I was really deeply unhappy with. And it was just time to throw it all up in the air and see what happened. So that sort of set me on a path to studying an MBA, moving into a frat house with a bunch of friends, giving the entire divorce settlement to charity, to Opportunity International, and set up a bank.
Did you really?
Yeah, he did a throwaway line, my ex-husband, where he said, you're not going to make it on your own. I wanted to ring them the next day and ask for it back because I kept quite literally nothing. None for bond, none for wages, none for my business. Like I cleaned out the account.
Extreme. That, ladies and gentlemen, is an extreme emotional reaction.
Oh, such an emotional reaction. So now when I'm counseling women about money and finances and divorce, I'm like, do you have a person that's your go-to person that you have to run all your financial decisions by them? Because that was so much. It took me quite a few years to recover from that.
Yeah, of course.
Where I talk about having quite less than nothing. But I worked out through all of that and reading and an MBA that I loved business. Like that was the thing I was excited about. And it didn't matter what shape that was. Yes, I had an accounting firm, but that meant that I had access to people's figures. It meant that I'd seen the breadth of businesses. I knew what their pain points were, and I could actually help them grow their business. And that's what I got excited about. So that was my convoluted way to that. And then from there, because I was trying very hard to look like a boy, which I kind of already look like because I've got no boobs, and look like a traditional accountant. And I worked out that, you know what, my point of difference is I was 6 feet tall and blonde and young. And how about I embrace that?
Yes.
So I started wearing what I wanted, pink on my logo. I wrote my first book, More Money for Shoes, which was a full color illustrated business book that compared building a wardrobe to building a business, and worked out the more that I was my authentic self, the more successful that I was. And that is totally led me to where I am today. The more I tap into that thing that's uniquely me, then the more successful I am.
That's fantastic. And you have to do that. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we kind of came across each other towards the end of your traditional bricks and mortar business. And this is what
Yes.
I think is so helpful for people is there's a lot of people that listen to the podcast that don't have online programs yet and
Mm,
have that really traditional business background and going, can I do it? Should I do it? I don't know. And you went from like as traditional business as they come with an
yeah.
accounting firm with staff and doing that
Hmm.
into this new life.
Uh-huh.
Um, so how long has it been now since you sold your accounting firm?
So November 2019, I sold. So 1st of November. And we set up, so interestingly, when I launched More Money for Shoes, I actually launched an online course with that
Mm,
called the Business Makeover Series, but I didn't market it. I didn't
yeah.
push it. I just created it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did it again later on. I called it the Numbers Lounge again. I told some clients about it in a couple of newsletters and then kind of let it go because I thought, well, obviously it's not successful.
Yeah.
So I'm a typical entrepreneur and I know how to create stuff.
Mm.
I'm just freaking hopeless at sticking with it and selling it, which
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
where what I have learned you really need to do in the online
Oh,
course world. It's
completely.
such a different animal.
Yeah, and this what so many people do is they do like they put it out and they send it out to their email database and they go, okay, it's out there now. I've ran a
Yeah,
webinar.
of course
And
people
if
will buy it.
it doesn't happen overnight, it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe this isn't right for
Hmm.
me. But it does take a lot more than that. I mean, I know
Yeah.
I still remember sitting at a business chicks lunch and looking, and you were like, yeah, I've got my online course like here. And I asked how many you'd sold and done that. And I'm going, like, I knew you as best-selling author, amazing profile, all of these things. I'm like, that is bullshit that you have sold that many. Like, I could get you selling so much more so quickly.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Yes.
and you totally. I think when we first met, just to I think really uh, push me. You just would love telling me how many different course of different people had sold.
Uh-huh.
Like, oh, come on, that's not
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's what worked for you. Yeah. Go,
Totally what
if
works for
they can
me.
do it, I can do it.
Yeah,
So what have you
absolutely.
seen is the biggest shift in going, or how was that moment for you in going from that traditional business and then looking at the online courses and trying to work out, is this a real business or is this a side thing I'm going to do? Like, how did that
Yeah.
process go?
So if I hadn't sold my accounting firm, it would have been a side thing.
Mm,
And I don't think they'd be anywhere near as successful because it needs to be a business in its own right. And it needs to
yeah.
be given the same love and care and consideration as a business.
Mm,
So I wouldn't have got that, or it would have taken me a long time to get that, which would have been a shame.
mm,
Um, it still doesn't feel like a business some days because there's a lot of time spent with me.
yes.
And I'm fortunate in that I have a preschool business and I've got Lauren in this online world with me. So it's not just me on my lonesome, but it is a different animal. And I'm sure it will start to feel like a business soon.
Mm,
But it's still foreign to me because there's not
mm,
there's not people
yeah.
coming into my office, there's not a lot of one-on-one. But what I know is that I'm an introvert. So it
Yeah.
works so beautifully for me
And
in
with
that I
that
don't
though,
have to have that.
like it's great that you can be in your own little world and do that, but it's also in an online course, often you are the product and you're
Yes.
selling your thought leadership and your expertise, and it's very much based on that. Has that, with
Mm.
having your introvertedness, has it been hard to be the product?
Not really. And I think that's thanks to COVID.
Mm,
So when COVID hit, I decided I was just going to start serving my community. I'd never done
yeah.
videos really before. I hadn't really used social media in that way before to really put out content. So I just decided this is what I was going to do. I didn't think I'm becoming more of a product. I didn't think anything like that. It was just, this is how I'm going to serve my community.
Mm,
And as a result of that, and the and people loving that, it made me realize, oh, okay, the more I do that, the more I'm prepared to put my head above the parapet,
mm,
risk it being shot at. But the
yeah.
more I put myself out there, the more people are going to want it, are going to connect, and are going to know about my product, and are potentially going to feel safe enough to purchase it.
Mm,
So I kind of became okay with being the brand in an accidental way, which I'm really
yeah.
grateful for.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I do think it's always like a lot of people see course creators and go, gosh, you're very extroverted and you're doing all of this stuff, but it's kind of performing and you can get on and you
Oh,
can do your
yeah.
performance and then you can actually go back into your own little shell where you're alone
Mhm.
in front of your computer and it's a beautiful business for
Yeah.
introverts.
And no different from speaking. So where you
Yeah.
go and you get on the stage and you do your thing and you then go into your bubble. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay, so I want to talk about the road to six figures and doing that to
Mm,
get it from the zero up there and getting it off the ground.
yeah.
How has that been in terms of, because I know when we first started working together and we were talking about launches and you were going through and you're going, really, I have to do all of this sort of thing? Like,
Yeah.
what's been the hardest part about having to do that for online that's so different to when you had your accounting firm?
I would say sticking to the process.
Mm.
So for me, I'm a bit of a bright, shiny object. I want to keep
Aren't
trialing
we
things.
all?
I want to keep creating and writing and putting stuff out there.
Yeah.
I have learned the more you stick to the process and the more you add in the automations and the follow the system that works, the more successful it is. And not to just trial something and say, well, that didn't work, but actually to adapt it and to trial it again and to trial it again.
Yeah.
And certainly my fourth launch was the most successful launch by miles. And if I hadn't kept going, I wouldn't have realized that. But it was taking my learnings and adapting them. And Lawsy and I are in the process of preparing for the next launch. And it is all about that process. We're like, right, what social tiles do we want? What automations need to happen? What Insta Lives need to happen? What challenge needs to happen? Which kind of goes against what I love. I'm not the disciplined, follow the steps person, but Lawsy is the disciplined, follow the steps person. So having someone like her that loves process
I
is
love the
really
systems.
key. Oh, absolutely. And you know, we've got a local business that we love to talk about where it was a running club. And for the first few months, he just kept turning up on a Wednesday and they would have 1 or 2 or 3 people turn up to their running club. Now, about 3 years later, there's 100 and more of them.
Wow.
It was that discipline of turning up every week, even though only one person came up, that more people found out. And there was that groundswell that meant then that he had this great business. And for me, it's the same for the online world.
Yeah.
And because you don't have that shop front, you know, Google is your shop front. It's a different mentality. It's a different way of standing out. And
I
so
think
it
a big
means you've
shift
got
for
to do the
you
things.
in your mentality too, from my point of view in watching you was, you know, I know after the first webinar, and this is the thing, you always had huge following on social media, huge amounts of people that came in, and you're so used to serving people.
Giving it all away for free.
Yeah, but not used to selling. And so there was a big shift in going, you know, I remember we got to the end of one webinar and I looked at the numbers. I'm like, I would expect your conversion to be so much higher than that. Did you like tell them and drop the link in that this is what you can buy? And you were like, no. And now your conversion is like sky high.
Yeah.
So what were those key things that you changed that could do it in a way that suited you?
So firstly, accountants suck at selling. You just do. And I don't think that's just limited to accountants. I think a lot of women
it's a lot of
selling.
people. It's hard to sell. Yeah.
Absolutely. And particularly when you're selling yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I could sell you something, this lip balm that I'm holding because it's the best thing ever and you totally need it.
Yes.
But to buy me, that's a lot harder. So as in my accounting firm, we used to talk about, these are the benefits, you know, this is how you're going to be able to grow. Yeah. And so I had to then refresh that mindset to go, all right, well, I'm not selling, but if I truly believe my course is going to be transformative financially for people, then I need to tell them about it. And I remember you put me onto Colin Boyd and I watched his webinar, Bits and Bobs. That's the official term I'm sure he uses, Bits and Bobs.
And his slogan is selling is serving.
See, there you go. And that just resonates with me.
Yeah.
And again, Colin sells a system and he sells paradigms and he sells templates.
He's
And
so good at framework making.
so good at framework
Yes.
making. And once I popped what I was doing into that, it meant that I could understand my customer in a different way, and I could pepper the webinar with what they needed rather than, oh God, oh God, oh God, here it comes. And then at the end going, oh, and then if you really like that, you can buy it.
Yeah, which is what makes people tank all the time.
Apologetic. Exactly.
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
I know. And of course they're not going to buy it because you're apologizing for it. You don't even believe in it. So once I realized, again, there's a system. And once I realized exactly why my customer needed my product, I had no problem peppering it through.
Yeah. And I do think that's the key is, it's the conviction and that belief in knowing that what you've got is so valuable that you will bring so much joy. And I think that's easier once you start, because I know once you saw people start going through and the impact that was making and the change that was making, you're like, you know what, I need more of that. Yeah.
And you can confidently say then, I know this is the result you're going to have because you've seen it. Whereas before you'd worked with people offline, so you can say, I know the result I have with them there, but not the result I'm having inside this course. So the more people that go through, the more confident.
Yeah. Was there a moment that you had where you've thought along the journey, because I know, you're a skeptic in a lot of things. You're like, show me the proof, show me the figures. Yeah. And I know when you started, you're like, I think this will work and I think we will do this, but we'll just see how we go. Was there a moment where you were like, you know what, this is going to work. I'm doing this thing.
Do you know what? I don't think I'm there yet, which is weird. So Lawsy is 100% there. She's like, I'm there, I'm committed, we're so going to smash this. I believe, and I was talking to my husband about this only last week. I said, in my accounting firm, I could predict with almost certainty, because people have to come back and do tax. Like they have to. In my preschool, I know that once they come in at 3, I've got them until school because they're going to stay. Whereas in the online course world, I've never sold something like that where people can choose to use it or not, where it's not an essential service.
Yeah.
So I know that I have a business, and I'm hopeful, like we've done all the work, we've got all the numbers, we're already seeing the result, but I feel like I need to see it. I need to keep seeing it. I know.
See, for me, because my moment was when I ran my first webinar and 3 people bought, I was like, this is me, I'm here. I'm done. Like I was 100% committed from that moment, because I was going, this is amazing.
Yeah, I must admit, it was the last webinar where we had 48 people on, and it was just the energy of it. And I realized that we'd hit the number that we wanted to hit. I'm like, oh, okay, bear it. Now there's some momentum happening. That was probably the time when I realized that, okay, if we keep going like this is a frigging amazing business. And I clearly believe in it, because we're now creating that same another online course for the preschool. So I know it's a business.
Yes. Now I want to switch and talk about your Genius Zone, because you are a genius in this area. And I love it so much, because I do think that, you look at the stats in the world and the wealth that women have compared with men, and how we do retirement and all of the different things. And I think it's so important. And I love that you look at both the money mindset, because there's so many courses out there for money mindset, but doesn't give you the actual tangible skills in going, what do I apply the mindset to? And you've got all of that. Like looking at it from an insider point of view, man, you guys, this is amazing. This course. So this episode's airing in January, just after Christmas, where people are probably
we're feeling so much more relaxed. Thank you for transporting me there.
Yes, right. Yeah. So talk to me about what that normal January period is like for people, and how you can start to get the year off to a good financial start.
Yeah. So often what happens in January is we've overspent during Christmas, or especially for this financial year. I'm concerned that we're going to hit January and it'll be a bit of a, oh, thank God that year was over. And so we have that twin thing of a financial hangover, because we've spent a little bit more, a little bit of hopefulness that this year's going to be different. But I think this year, 2021, we're also going to have a bit of fear around, I know I need to do more with my finances. I know that was a lesson I learned from last year. I just don't know what. And that's where we want to come in to say, it's more than just money mindset. That's so freaking important, and it needs to be the bedrock that you build your finances on. So I know that, and I know that's why those courses are successful, because it is the first step and it's vital. But we've just made over the course and added in a lot more goodness, because we also know it's about creating that financial plan, figuring out where you are now, plan for debt, where you want to go, but also learning about investing. You know, if you started the financial year going, I know I need to do something more, I just don't friggin' know where to start, and I've got no one to ask questions of.
Yeah.
You know, we have 3 modules within the course on investing:
Yeah.
shares, property, and business.
Yes.
And then habits for your money types. And we're not selling anything. And I think that's what I'm excited about. You do a shares course, and they're trying to sell you their system. We're not trying to do that. It's just about education and empowerment, and then encouraging you to have a go yourself.
Yeah. And this is the course Mel's talking about, is Financial Adulting Plan, which is, it's amazing. It covers everything in there. And if you're listening to this when it comes out, it is open now for a very limited time. And then if you've listened late, then it opens 3 different times of the year. So you can join the wait list and get in there later. But so coming in to January and doing that, aside from joining the course, which I think is like the most amazing thing to do if you want to get real serious about it. But what do you find is like the lowest hanging fruit of something really simple that a lot of people could benefit from cutting out? I know the tip you gave to me that was fantastic, which I'll share after.
So I've probably got a few. So one would be do a 30-day financial detox. So 30 days of not buying anything new. And I'm talking needs, not wants. No, wants, not needs. Oh, I get that wrong.
Yeah.
So you can obviously buy your groceries, all that sort of stuff, but clothes, shoes. For my hubby, it's coffees and croissant. Like he's by the time his 30-day detox, he's literally 2 at a time coffees, croissant on the top, and then he goes back for his 3rd and another croissant.
Wow.
At the end of the day, and buying lunches. So that's his thing. But it's a 30-day detox, and during that time, you're asking the question, why am I spending? And what's causing me to spend? You know, am I spending because I'm stressed? Am I spending because I'm bored? Am I spending because it's a Friday night and I'm lonely and I'm sitting here with a glass of wine and the phone's out? Am I spending because of a host of other reasons? And it's questioning those and then unsubscribing, unfollowing from all of those things that are causing you to spend, and changing your behavior and your money environment so that you're not tripped up by those things.
Yeah.
So that would be my really big one. And for anyone listening that kind of felt a bit sick when I said that, a little bit of vomit came up in your throat, you abso-freaking-lutely need to do it.
Yeah.
So that would be my one thing. The other thing I'd highly encourage you to do is go back through 3 months worth of spending, because a lot of us have these values. It might be, I want to care for the environment, or I want to care for, you know, I really deeply care about mining, and I'm anti-mining, or I'm very deeply care about Black Lives Matters, or whatever the thing that you're passionate about, or modern slavery. And I encourage you to go back through 3 to 6 months worth of spending and just look at how you're spending in light of those values. Because often when we're time poor, often when we just need to get things done, or we're hurried or stressed, we don't realize that we operate with our spending outside of those values. So it's just highlighting those times or those spends that potentially are outside of those values, and then question, was I stressed? Was I time poor? Or have I just never equated the fact that that spend is against that value? And what could I substitute instead? And then going and swapping, pausing, or cancelling those expenses. So that's a couple of really easy things you can do. just to start to bring financial consciousness to your year
Mhm.
and already start to make a difference to your
I
finances.
love that. I mean, for me, I've gotten out of control this year because of no travel. Like I've pretty
Yes.
much like drilled it down
Yeah.
to not having the excitement of travel, because I travel a
Mm.
lot. I go overseas 4 times a year. I'm on a plane
Ah.
usually every second week, and that kind of lights me up and gives me a different change of scenery and something to look forward to. And I found very 2020 with the consistent weeks.
Yeah. You needed to bring in some happy.
I needed to like
Mhm.
manufacture some happy. And I found myself following all of these amazing places on Instagram. And every time they would post something, I'd go, ooh.
I
And I'd
need
buy,
that.
yes. And it got to the stage where
Endorphin
like
hit.
every day something was arriving. I was going,
Mhm.
I think I have a problem. And then you said, well, just unfollow everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? But they're so pretty. I don't want to unfollow them. And I went through and literally went from 1,300 things that I was following down to 800. So like 500 of them when I was going through was like, oh yeah, they're making me buy. They're making me buy. They're
Mhm.
making me buy.
Yeah.
And I haven't bought anything since because I
And
haven't
it's
seen
the
it.
consciousness, right? It's no problem buying it if you choose to,
Yes.
but it's I'm not even realizing that's why. And I'm
Yeah.
following 500 sites that are causing me to buy. And of course, if I'm jumping on my phone and seeing one of those 500, or let's be honest, 100 of those 500, because we know the algorithms is the more you look and click on those things, the more you're
Oh,
going to be
yeah.
shown those
Well,
type
that's the
of
ones I was
sites.
following, and then it's everything else that they
Mhm.
push into me. And my thing is, because
Yeah.
I love wearable art, which I have some on right now. I like to
Yeah.
call it wearable art. But with them, they do limited runs, so you miss it. You miss it.
FOMO. Yep. Smart.
Oh, yes. And so I think
Mhm.
just that alone is such a great tip, because
Yeah.
I'm not alone in that.
Oh God, no.
in
No.
Instagram shopping,
And I
especially in
call
the
it,
year of COVID.
yeah, and I call it curating your money environment. You know, we're
Mm,
so careful with different environments that we curate. It's doing the same thing for our money environment,
mm.
so that we're the ones in charge of our spending and saving,
Yeah.
and investing decisions and goals. But I love those hacks. You know, the simple
Yeah.
things you can do. One of my favorite is that I do, because I'm a bit like you. I get a bit bored. I miss the thrill of going and speaking and traveling and
Yeah.
doing all the things despite being an introvert. So I tend to bring a bit of happy, thanks to Net-a-Porter.
Yeah.
So I have a rule that I can, and I've just changed it. So it used to be, if I spend $1, I have to invest $1 in shares.
Yeah, I love that.
That way, bit of happy coming in, but I'm also looking after my future self. So I have to be able to afford twice, and it can't go on credit.
Yeah.
Now I add in a third, which is I have to, if I want to spend $1, I have to put $1 into shares, and I also have to give $1 to charity.
Wow. Yeah.
That way, I now have to afford 3 times as much.
Yeah.
So therefore, I'm then really being conscious around
Yeah.
what's coming in.
Do I really need this?
Yeah. So I still can
Yeah.
buy.
Yeah.
I just need to be able to afford 3 times as much.
Yeah, I like that. And so with all the uncertainty that we've had this year, like I think finances usually is uncertain. Like I know at the best of times, people talk to me about shares. I invest in property because I understand property.
Yep.
And I've got very small amount of shares, because it's always like, it blows my mind how company shares can go up and down with one
Volatile. Yeah.
announcement that I'm like, what? That's so out of my control and so volatile.
Yeah.
But so I think at the best of times we're confused, and especially after COVID, there's so much uncertainty. I think it's still a good time. Like any time is a good time. Like that Chinese proverb, you know, the best time was 10 years ago. The second best time is now. Should you still just go for it?
Look, I absolutely think so. And I have a thing where you're not timing the market, it's time in the market.
Yeah, that's a good saying.
It's a good one, isn't it?
Like write that down, people.
But it was what I loved when COVID hit is I'd had two cohorts go through the financial adulting plan. I reckon half of them contacted me during it and said, Mel, I realise that shares are on sale and I've bought my first lot of shares today. So they were buying shares when COVID hit because they understood that, sure, they didn't know if shares were going to keep going down. They also didn't know how long it would take to go up, but they understood they're on sale. And if I've got a long-term time frame and I've got this money that's not earmarked for something in the near future, I can invest. So they were only investing small, but they were investing. And I was so freaking proud of that.
Yeah.
Because so many people during COVID, during 2020, invested in shares. And more young people invested in shares than ever before. Because they'd kind of given up on property.
Yeah.
They'd realized, oh, hang on, this share market thing, I can get into that with $500, with $100.
Yeah.
So and I was jumping on Insta Lives and doing things like when Adore Beauty did its IPO, I jumped on and said, should we be buying Adore Beauty? Just so that people could start to realize this is something that we can make up our own minds about. We don't have to believe the hype, and we're all equipped to choose whether we want to invest in shares or not.
And you're amazing sharing all of the knowledge like that.
Well, shares for something is that I totally hear what you're saying around volatility, but it's that thing where it's so accessible. Property is not accessible for everyone, yet shares is accessible for everyone. And it can be a way that you can start to invest without feeling like you're never going to be able to get ahead.
Are you on a different strategy for each person depending on their situation, or you think if people want to get started, they should go for like the common blue chip shares, or pick the things that you use, or
totally different depending on your risk profile, depending on your situation, and that's all stuff we talk about in the course. And it depends if it's active investing or passive. So some people just love an exchange traded fund, an ETF. You buy the top 200 shares, you don't have to think about it, and you can keep contributing to that. And then if one drops out of that every quarter, you don't have to do anything. You just own the top 200 shares. So it's got a little bit more volatility than a blue chip. And a blue chip just means a BHP or something super safe, and it's going to pay dividends. So there's a bit more volatility, but also there's potentially there's a bit more return as well. And we certainly have seen them go great guns over the last few years. Whereas others love and have got the time and inclination and want to pick individual shares. And so what I do is I actually open up my share account, because I think that we don't know, we don't see what we don't know. We know property because we drive past it, we see it. We know people that are buying it. We know how to buy and sell it. Well, we don't know that for shares. So I actually open up my account and show people how to do that in the course.
It's amazing that you do that.
Well, I just think, I mean, it was difficult. It was humbling to do it in May. It was either it was the Feb cohort, because my shares had just been smashed. I was behind, and I opened it going, right, so the sea of red, and let me just explain why I'm not stressed and why I'm not selling. So it was humbling, but also that good lesson to be able to show that you don't sell just because the market takes a dip. You don't look at it if you need to, but you don't necessarily sell. I think part of it is showing people this is
showing
what it
the
looks
practicality
like.
of it as well. I know the only shares I've ever bought are the shares that companies I use. That was my thing, and going, well, if I use it, I know what it is.
And that can often be a great way to start. You know, I used to say to my accountants, Xero, so XERO. And when they floated, I would say to them, we go to Xerocon. You get they talk about the figures, they talk about the uptake. Come on. That was probably the most I've ever pushed. And of course, none of them bought it because they felt unsure. So I would then be the person that every week came in and go, well, it's up to you now, girl. But because she'd heard me bang on about it for 2 or 3 years, Lawsy, when COVID hit, went and bought Xero shares and a few others that she knew, because she'd been hearing it. And as you said, she felt really safe with it. So if that's your strategy, that's fine. As long as it's the same thing as only buying property in your suburb. You don't want to do that. You don't have that. You don't have that diversity. With shares, you don't just want to buy what you know. If all you know is retail or medical, need some diversity there too. Sorry, I could bang on about this.
No, I love it. I'll be in financial adulting
passion.
Okay, I love it. Now, one last question I want to ask is like, what are you focusing on for 2021? Because I know that through 2020, it's messed with a lot of people in going, what I knew for sure and what my beliefs were and how we conducted business and all that is going to be different in that. Did it alter something for you that you're like, you know what, this is what I'm focusing on in 2021?
Absolutely. So 2020, two big things. I know what I stand for. So I'm so excited about helping women empower them financially and through their business. So that is my absolute go-to. I know what I'm not. So I had said no to so much work.
Yeah.
Anything to do with a buy now, pay later site.
I love that you did that too, because that's so much integrity.
And I just saw too many people saying yes to it. And I inherently know buy now, pay later cause you to overspend. It does. They'll say it's a budgeting tool, but it's not. They're aimed at retailers, and they tell retailers, you put this on your site, your average spend goes up. They know that.
Yeah.
So I know what I know who I'm serving. I know what I'm absolutely going to say no to. But I also learned that I don't want to work any more than 3 days a week.
Yeah.
I want to have I don't need to hustle for my worthiness anymore.
Yeah.
Really let go of that. The ego associated with the large firm and everything that came with that. I just don't
How
need
liberating
that.
to let that go.
Well, you know what a basket case I was when I was trying to do all the things. And I look at my diary now, back then, and I feel physically sick.
But isn't it like that when for the last 5 years of my last business, I did 12-hour days. And the thing is, when you're on it, it's just so habitual and the adrenaline's so pumping but now I look at it and I go, what was I even thinking?
Absolutely. But at the time you're like, no, of course this is just what you do. This is the next thing. Whereas next year we've already put our plan together. We want to make more than $500,000 through online courses alone, then plus everything else that Lawsy and I will do. And then the following year, we want to hit $1 million. So, and that's where, when you said to me, do you believe this could be a business? That's where I think, yes, it can.
Yeah.
Because if that's mainly profit, it's a fucking good business.
It is. Yes.
Without people, without staff.
That will be the social media quote.
That's a fucking good business.
Yeah, I love it. I love you. I love what you do. I love the impact you have for so many people, and I've seen it with so many people I've worked with as well that have worked with you. So everyone get on it. I will link it in the show notes, but it's also melissabrown.courses.
With an E on the end of Brown, just because I'm a strange one. And I'm grateful for you too. Gosh, I'm so grateful that at that retreat you were there and gave me the prod to realize that actually you can do this. And you don't have to think traditional. There is another way. So I'm inherently grateful that I've discovered you.
Oh, what a love fest we're finishing on. Thanks, Mel. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.